Hello, my name is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Printavo, the parent company of Inksoft, Printavo, Graphics Flow, SignTracker, Clarity. And if you haven't heard yet, we have merged with Order My Gear. Courtnee Wampole is broadcasting live from Buffalo, Wyoming. Courtney had put together a master class on shop management, and it's a four-part series. One of the things I wanted to do was create an interactive, kind of not really an interview, conversation, we'll call it, about shop management in general. And Courtney and I have been on several industry panels around this topic. It's a lot. I think it's just a wonderful topic to talk about. But I'm going to preface it with this, and if the shoe fits, wear it. If not, that's cool too. But in our industry, we tend to be really good makers of things and build things. We can sew, we can pull a squeegee, we can do graphic design, we can do all this stuff. But oftentimes, the business stuff comes later. So we learn our physical craft of making, and then we have to learn to be business people later. And that can cause a lot of unnecessary mental anguish, drama, whatever you guys want to call it. And so part of the reason we're doing this class today is to kind of get you guys thinking critically about your business and some of the things and systems and things you can put in place to be more efficient. So Courtney, do you mind giving me a quick bio of yourself and how you got into this crazy business?
Yeah, I was actually on a webinar earlier this morning on sales, and I was listening to it, and everyone kind of has a very non-linear path into this business. It's kind of by accident. So, mine is very similar. I was in law school at the time, met my husband. He was running heavy equipment, and he had a side hustle doing screen print in his parents' basement. So that was my first entry into the industry. Couple years later, we got married, had kids. I wanted to stay home. So I took over the marketing, sales part of the business and the business side of it and helped grow that. That was about 2010. I met him, 2013. We got married 2015. I left my law practice. And so it's been about 12 years since I've been working on our business. Took a side detour to Buffalo. We wanted to be out west, raising our family in the mountains and just a different lifestyle than we had grown up with on the East Coast. And we brought our shop from Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, to Wyoming. Wasn't sure what was going to happen with it. So I called my buddies up at Printavo and said, hey, can I come work for you guys for a little bit until I figure out what's going to happen here? Took a side detour there, sold software, worked with a lot of shops, helped implement and sell to shops for Printavo, and left in August 2024 to join our business full time again. So we have a print shop that does, school districts, businesses, corporate, nonprofits, brands, construction, all the things, screen print, embroidery in house. We do direct to film and promo products and all the things. So really like a B2B hometown print shop is kind of what we're doing.
And I'll just add a little color to that. They came into this little town of Buffalo, Wyoming, and there was yeah, I think he had one singular competitor in town, and they've just took it over. And they've not only taken the regional business in Buffalo over, but they've expanded into other parts of the community. And you did all that while retaining most of your business from your Philly operation, which still
Yeah.
runs. So you're running that part remotely. So kudos to you and Brian for being able to do that. So let's get right into it. I've got prepared some questions for you. Hopefully they're not catching you off guard at all, but I think you're pretty well qualified to answer these. So the first one I want to ask you about is, what has been your biggest operational challenge? And, when you started to scale and grow, what was it that kind of stood in your way and maybe surprised you a little bit? You're starting to grow, you're starting to scale, things are getting bigger, and you're like, wow, we need to take a step back because of this thing. What was that thing?
100% honest, it was myself. I am my biggest bottleneck. I'm my biggest roadblock. I think when you are an entrepreneur, and quite honestly, like in law practice, a lot of that is also selling, and trying to, they say, eat what you kill. And so your business is basically your income. And that's very similar to owning your own business and having a small business. That's not something I ever wanted to do intentionally. I just wanted to do a really good job at something, get paid money for it. And I didn't want to deal with having a business. That was not like anything that was a goal of mine. So I kind of fell into it by accident. And when you have a business, when you have that entrepreneurial mindset, I think a lot of us think, at least speaking for myself, and I've spoken to a lot of other shops, that they feel like they're the ones that can do it best. they have to do everything and no one can do it better than me. And that was definitely my mindset. And so growing and scaling for me, one of the hardest things was just saying, "Hey, I can delegate this. There's someone else that knows this as good as I do, can do just as good of a job, if not better." And so getting out of my own way was hard, for sure. For some reason, I could always delegate the actual printing to Brian. Like, that is something that I fully, wholeheartedly, 1000% trust him to do, is all of the actual production work, and I want nothing to do with it. But everything else is my stuff, and so having to figure out how I was gonna do all of the things was definitely the hardest part.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate. I own digital art solutions. I definitely had that same mentality. Nobody can do it better than me. But you know what I discovered is that if you let go a little bit, there's a lot of people that can do it not only better than you, but it frees your mental space up to apply to other more important things about your business. My dad used to call it being mired in the minutia,
Mhm.
and it's that opportunity cost, right? The things that you can be doing that are more productive. A follow-up question to that, so what have you done with all this free time since you've started delegating and you have a little bit of more time on available to you? What do you how are you spending that time now?
Free time, well, we are moving shop locations, so there's no free time at the moment. We also have 4 kids and a farm full of hobby animals, so it's just kind of chaos, honestly. Um, One of the things, though, is I have honestly been able to work in the business, less and work on the business more, and this is something that I talk about in shop management classes and in my conversations with other shops. Um, there's always room for improvement. We hired someone to come in and handle all of our receiving, um, and check-in and all of that kinda stuff and help clean up on the end of jobs. So the fact that I was able to kind of give that away saved up a couple hours of my time, honestly, um, daily. So practicing what I preach is sometimes hard for me, but, with that, I've been able to really work on the business, try and get some processes and procedures in place, work on things that I wanna work on, look at high scale, or, high level profit, numbers, sales tactics, procedures, that kinda stuff.
Yeah, I'm flashing back to the shop days when our family business was a company called Desert Sportswear, which is a very large decorated sportswear business that kind of tended to college bookstores. I remember getting those shipments in and looking at a pile of boxes, maybe 40, 50 boxes, and realizing that we were going to have to count all that in. We are going to have to split all that up into orders. Question number two: what's a common mistake you see shop owners making when it comes to juggling between all these different the menu of things that you can offer customers, decoration methods, product types? What are some of the mistakes that you see around that?
I'm a big proponent of doubling down on what you do well, and we used to say yes to absolutely everything, and we have been able to step back from that a little bit and really focus on what we're good at. Doesn't mean we're not offering, to outsource something, but I see a lot of shops that wanna say yes to everything, every single type of order that comes in the door, and it might not be the best fit, especially for your bottom line. And so I'm a huge proponent of outsourcing things that you do not do in-house or do not have the capacity to do or can't do, in order to turn a profit. And so for us, being able to let go of some of that, and then with the processes, right? So, there's not one size fits all in terms of how you're running things in your shop. You have screen print, you have embroidery, you have promo, you have DTF. All of those run on a different process. And so you really have to have different workflows for all of those things and then have a shop management software that's flexible enough to allow you to have separate functioning workflows for all of those differences.
Yeah, I never realized that until I started dipping into Printavo. I remember back in the shop days when I was working in my dad's warehouse in high school, a little bit in college, before I moved inside and started doing sales. I remember, using a lot of whiteboards, and we had different processes and job envelopes, and the digitized so what would go in the job envelope along with the instruction sheet, along with the check-in sheet from the inventory, along with the work order, and they would kind of pass through the phase. But we kind of it was kind of like a one size fits all type of situation. And, with the decoration methods being so complicated today with all the digital stuff and DTG, and now you throw in um, promo products, you definitely can't do it in one methodology. How do you manage that in your Printavo account? I'm just curious.
So for us, each different type of imprint that we do, or each print method essentially has its own category when we're building out the order so the customer has their eyes on it, but then we also have our eyes on it. If it's something we print in-house, we will add the imprint information in there so our team knows what they're doing. And then, you know, through that, it then goes over to the power scheduler for us where we can manage those different job types in buckets essentially. So that if we have someone coming in that just does cleanup on embroidery, that funnels through just to that person. They can filter their views so they're just seeing what their tasks are for the day related to what department they work in.
Yeah, if you've ever worked in Printavo, you have job stages that are linear, top to bottom. Maybe the first job stage is, produce quote, send quote, quote approved, design department, pre-production for scheduling, all the way through shipping and delivery. But when you get to the production phase, there's something called the power scheduler that's in the Printavo premium account. And I always like to explain customers the standard linear journey gets a side trip, and that side trip is the power scheduler, because when it goes over to the power scheduler, then you have all the individual specific workflows for each type of process, whether it's finishing or it's DTG, DTF, embroidery, screen print, wide format. It's really wonderful. And when it's done and all those steps are checked off in the power scheduler and it's out the door, it just returns back to the main journey to get fulfilled, box labels and packing slips and out the door or delivery. So it's a pretty amazing tool. And when I started dipping into Printavo and really learning it, I was like, wow, that's a really clever way to do it. Because I see a lot of shop management tools, like the ones that I've worked with, everything's the kind of the same workflow, top to bottom for all the processes. It doesn't really fit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, the intrigue with Printavo and why we ended up choosing it is because it was simple, but it was also scalable and something that was flexible with how we were doing things. So I think super important about shop management, and I talked about this in the webinar series that I did. Um, there's not one size fits all unless you're going to build something out yourself. And when you build something out yourself, you're spending a lot of money and a lot of time. And then when you need a fix, it's more money, and it's more time. So I think when you're looking at shop management and when you're doing your due diligence on all of the different products that there are out there in the market, it's really important to look at what shop management software is going to allow me to just take what I'm doing, right? What exists, what my workflows are, and get that into their system, right? Not the other way around. So, not, hey, this is how you should be quoting a job. This is how you should be sending approvals out. This is when you should be invoicing. You don't want it to be static like that. You really want it to be flexible to how you do things. And so that was really why we chose Printavo, because it was just something that we could take what we were doing already, get it into their system, and then automate from there and not reinvent the wheel.
Everyone's journey into shop management software is a little bit different. Some people, they sign up for like a franchise, they have it from day one, which is beautiful because you have good habits from day ones. Sometimes folks are like, well, we're just going to grow into it. We're going to wait till we have enough business to justify the expense. I think that's a massive mistake. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of in the kicking the can down the road. And what I see oftentimes is I kind of put it into three buckets, so to speak. Bucket one is Houston, we've got a problem. At some point, everybody bottoms out, and they realize they have to do something. Jobs are getting balls are getting dropped. It's costing the company money. You can't grow. Employees are stressed. I actually had an employee intervention in a meeting in the last couple of months where the owner was in the meeting and said, the only reason I'm here meeting with you is my employees say they're going to quit if we don't put some kind of system in place. I was like, well, hi, nice to meet you too. My name is Craig. And that's how the meeting started. So, and then I think phase two is the implementation phase where you implement your system and it's just the way you do things. And you could you could never go back. Am I right? Not
Yeah,
a chance. Yeah,
for
you can never
sure.
go back. And then third phase, I think that's the payoff phase where you can see if the company's making money. But most importantly, the restoration of life balance and sanity phase. But there's a lot of obstacles that get in the way of that desired final state, right? And Courtney, what are some of the things that you feel like, that kind of prevent people from adoption for kind of struggling to get things rolling with their shop management solution?
Yeah, I would say there's also like a 1A stage too, which is something that we fell into. And so in that shop management series, I talk a lot about our experience with it and our analysis on when we needed it, why we needed it, and then kind of the paralysis of, okay, we have it now, but I don't know how to use it, what to do. I'm not using it to its fullest extent. So I see a lot of people that know they need it. They recognize that. They know they have the problem. They even pull the trigger, put their credit card information in, and then they don't do anything with it until they get to that 2 stage where they're like, okay, and they're bought in and they're using it. And so for us, that definitely happened. We were long overdue. And so Brian tends to be like the dreamer, the big picture guy, like, always thinking big. I am the one that's like very analytical, and I will do my research and my due diligence almost to the fault on the other side. And so we're a good balance of each other. He forces me to move my hand sometimes on things, and then I pull him back. And I think that's important to have in a business partner or whatever, because you can really make some really good decisions that way. But for this one, it was definitely something that was long overdue. We've been making too many mistakes running on paper, or Post-its or spreadsheets or whatever, and just wasn't working. Tons of mistakes, lost jobs, all the things. And so when we decided that we were going to get it, we went ahead and bought it. It was right after we got a new embroidery machine. I said, I need this to run the shop if you are going to go, if you're going to buy another piece of equipment and we're going to keep scaling and growing. And so it was really for me. We had gone to trade shows several times. We're always looking at it, never pulled the trigger. Finally, we did. But then I did let it sit there because there was this overwhelming feeling of, oh my gosh, I have this. I don't know what to do with it. I have no idea. And I don't have the time, right? So time is a huge factor. Experience, knowledge, and just like not knowing if you're using it to its full effectiveness. And I feel like having an accountability partner or someone that can really help you with that is super important. Um, for whatever reason, I was able to just start chipping away at this, which is not normally my normal way that I operate. I tend to like want to do everything at one time, have it done, have it be perfect, burn myself out, and then never go back to it. Um, for this, I was just able to really go through and break that mindset and kind of chip away. And each time I made a process or a procedure or a status or something was automated, it gave me time back 10x on the other side, 100x. I mean, now it's, you do it one time and it comes back to you. And so that's kind of a lot of the hesitation that I see for sure.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with 2 shops last week, both they were within 50 miles of each other in New England, and one was in New Hampshire, the other was in Massachusetts. And shop number 1, um, doing some consulting work for them, the mind was so closed, and they had been around for 40. I've been around for 40 years. This has always worked. And, they had initially, expressed some interest in implementing a shop management tool. And I don't know, I think I'm at the stage of my career where if I have to fight somebody over the idea that implementing a technology stack around shop management is a good idea, that maybe they're just not ready yet. But the other shop, wow, like they had signed up for the platform, and like normally when I dip into somebody's account and see where they're at with things, and they've been doing it a week, usually they're not very. I'm like, holy smokes, you guys have all your pricing logic in here. You guys are sending. It says, yeah, this is like the thing we've been looking for our whole time. Once we got started, it just kind of created its own momentum because we're seeing, even from these little micro steps we're doing, we're seeing it like immediate payoff. And I was like, wow, talk about a spectrum, right? And
Definitely the like outlier, I would say, that like that mentality.
yeah, yeah. So like I thought about getting these 2 shops together. It's and maybe you should have a conversation. But so as far as like, running into like bottlenecks and such, like what's an example of a bottleneck? I know you talked a little bit about delegation as a bottleneck, but some of the bottlenecks that you ran into, and then how did you solve for them?
Like the quoting, the order entry, all of that, like everything stopped with me. So if I wasn't doing it or not delegating it, it wasn't getting done. When I'm able to remove myself from that and delegate things, magical things happen. And I think the more I repeat that process, the more that I continue. It's like, positive reinforcement. The more benefits you see from delegating or using other people's experiences, the better you are. And the more you do that, the more you realize it and want to do it more and more. So that was definitely some of that. Saying yes to everything, saying yes to customers that we shouldn't have said yes to. That gut instinct is so important. And like, I still catch myself sometimes like saying yes to something and then being like, oh my goodness, I should not have said yes to this. And you're regretting it. And so I feel like to a certain point, um, you know, bottlenecks like that are super common. And just being able to uh to move that. So
One of the things I see a lot with shops too, especially when they're implementing shop management software, they try to take it on all at once.
Yep.
And just for those of you, our viewers that are kind of new to all this, one of the times that the first time you actually go through an exercise of figuring out what you actually charge people is when you're setting up your pricing logic in Printavo, because you need to have a grid there that says if I order this many of this and it's got this many colors or stitches, it's going to cost this, right? I feel like sometimes, that initial setup process and going through that pricing
Mhm.
exercise, it is like one of the biggest, most persistent bottlenecks in getting set up on shop management, because you really have to kind of take a look at how you charge for things, what they
Yep.
cost, and how you're going to price moving forward. Has that been your experience too, or
Pricing is like it's crazy. It is different for every single shop. There's no one size fits all approach. It has to do with your market. It has to do with, where you are, your geographic location, what your customers are willing to spend, and just a whole bunch of things. And so, it probably one of the questions I get asked the most from other shops is like, how do you price this? How do you price this? And like I always say to them, because I remember the days back when we first started, literally, where we would Google like screen printing pricing matrix, and we're literally just taking it off the internet. And that's what we're using to price our jobs when we were super new. And so for that, we have definitely grown and we've definitely, come a far away from that, but it is such a hard thing. And so I always warn people, you cannot price based on what the competitor is charging. I mean, you have to be aware of it, but you also have to realize that, like, if you are going to undercut your pricing just to win pricing, you are going to, it's never going to work. Because if you are losing money on every single job, you're never going to turn a profit. And so, losing a cent on every job is never going to add up to anything. So, we are actually, I didn't even talk to you about this, Craig, but we are using the Print Profit software now. And so we have been having, and Nick's an awesome guy. I'm happy to chat with anyone who wants to know more about that. We don't have time on this webinar, but really taking a look at each job on an individual basis and seeing, like, is this job profitable? Why is it not? Why isn't it as profitable as it should be? And then how am I getting there? And so again, I'm a huge proponent of, like, for years, I'm like, I can do this myself. It's fine. I can do this myself. I can do this myself, but I can't, like, literally can't. And so to delegate that part of it and have someone hold me accountable for it is been really, really good.
I completely agree with you, and that's a hard exercise, so it's like homework when you're a kid, you
Oh,
kinda put it off,
it's
you know?
I can tell you that, like, ignoring the elephant in the room only makes it worse, and, like, it's been hard to look at things, but, like, you also can see, like, "Hey, it's not as bad as I thought," or, like, "We're actually doing okay," or, like, "Hey, I see how I can get there," and I think that what you measure, what gets done, and so if you have goals and you see that visually, it's going to happen, because you have the visibility on it, so.
What metrics do shop owners often overlook that are costing them profit?
We when we chatted a little bit ago, we kinda talked about this. So credit card processing fees were one for us and shipping fees, 2 really big easy reaches. And, the other thing too is, like, I don't even necessarily think you need to line item those. It just depends on how you wanna see it. As long as you're covering those things and your expenses on the job and you're hitting the numbers that you wanna hit, but that's something that we weren't doing, and that was really easy reach. Something that was super eye-opening lately was working in conjunction with this other system and with Nick is being able to see those individual jobs. And like some of the stuff that we've been doing is, you have that customer that orders and then, they want one more piece or two more pieces or three more pieces. And I'm like, oh, it's fine. The screens are up. Or like, oh, it's no big deal. We'll just grab some transfers. But when I see that reorder priced at the same exact price I did for 150 pieces, like, being nice is, like, only so great, but then you're not putting money in your pocket, and so
Right.
being able to see that, so one of the things that I'm really motivated to do is, like, "Hey, yes, we can redo this job," or, like, "Hey, yes, we can do 5 more, but it's gonna be this much more," because you don't get that quantity break, and so to be able to see that broken down in real time is really cool.
Yeah, I guess it's a form of tough love, isn't it?
Mm,
It's like,
mhm.
you
And I mean,
take
the
those.
thing is too, if you're gonna keep saying yes, or like if I keep saying yes to these, "Hey, I need these by Friday," or, "Hey, I need these by next Tuesday," and there's a holiday on Monday, like, it is that positive reinforcement. It's like my kids, right? So they're just gonna keep doing it because I just keep saying yes, and so it's stepping away from that and being able to have those boundaries for sure.
Yeah, I think most people are pretty reasonable. I think if you explain it in
Mhm.
context, like, "Hey, listen, I've gotta drag out all these screens, I gotta reburn them. The amount of setup and work that's involved in getting these 5 shirts done is the same as your first 100. So, because I have those fixed costs, I'm gonna have to pass some of that on to you, and we'll be fair about it, but here's what it's gonna cost you." And I think if you just full transparency, um, that's always the best policy in my opinion. I think customers a lot of times, if you start being evasive about things or apologizing, it definitely creates some friction in the relationship, and, who ends up losing in that case? You do, so if you're just straightforward with people, I think they really appreciate it. Um, like hidden costs, you talked a little bit about shipping and credit card fees, but, like, art fees, how do you handle that? Because art is a real cost, and there's labor
We
involved
have
in that.
Yeah, we have outsourced art, but it's a monthly subscription, so I pay a monthly fee, but that needs to be accounted for, right? So that's something that I definitely need to take a harder look at and something where I fall short. Um, for some of these ground up orders where people want something, like, very intricate or, a design created from scratch, I've been saying to them, "Hey, we are happy to give you, 2 different mock-up versions of something or, but we're gonna have to charge you for that." Because there's always that scenario of, A, you do all these mock-ups or you do this art, and then like, "Oh, that's fine, we're not gonna order right now." So the time, the money, the effort out the window for this order that you thought you were going to get. We're pretty good about that lately, but I've actually also been charging, if a lot of times, like, there's no customer wants to hear and you don't wanna sit here and talk to your customers about what's the difference between vector, raster, PNGs, JPEGs, PDF, EPS, AI, like, no one cares, and your customer doesn't care, and they 9 times out of 10 don't have the right file. So what we've taken the mindset of is we just do it, for simple stuff like that. But, if they're wanting designs or logos or things from the ground up, we've started to charge for that to recoup some of that monthly fixed cost.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were at the DAC show in Kansas City over the weekend, and we had one of our customers came up, and we had sold him the previous year, and we were just checking in to see how he's doing, and he's doing great. And he said, "The one thing I really love is my graphics flow." So I asked him a little bit more about it, and I liked the answers he was giving me. And I said, "Hey, listen, let's do a little impromptu testimonial." So I mic'd him up and interviewed him. And the interesting part is he was a graphic designer. And he's basically the short version. He said, "Hey, listen, I don't have time to do all these custom jobs for these customers. They think art just, happens magically. And I send them to my portal. They find something. A lot of times, what they're asking for, I don't really have to change it much at all. Just change the text and the colors and maybe drop in a new mascot. They're super happy. It's super fast." And he says, "It's just been a game changer for me because it frees me up to do all these other things instead of getting mired down in the art." And I know people solve that multiple ways. You have access to graphics flow too, but also sometimes you do have that requirement for that higher end art, and then you outsource. So you outsource that to a third party graphics company. Is that correct? Is that how you do it, Courtney?
Yeah, we do. Yep.
So do you pay a flat fee, or are you paying piecework? So is it
We
you pay a
were
set amount monthly, or are
Yeah,
you paying by the
we
job?
do. We do because we have a one-to-one personal artist, and we use Graphic Source, and if anyone is interested in talking about them, I'm happy to do that too. But we were paying à la carte, meaning, like, for each piece of art, we were paying, and when I ran the numbers, I was like, "This is ridiculous." We're almost to the point where it's, you know, having a full-time artist is cheaper, if not right there with just putting things in the portal one-on-one, but yeah, we pay a monthly fee, but they're like
Yeah.
employee ours essentially.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Graphic Source. If you're not familiar with Graphic Source, they have to be the one of the largest outsourced graphics companies on the planet. And what's kind of neat about it in Cordy's situation, she has a full-time dedicated artist, but they're part of a team. So if that person isn't maybe really good at one part of it and the other team member is better at it, that team member might jump in. And the other part about it is they are trained on the intricacies of artwork for apparel decoration, signage, all the things that we do. And they actually have a university. They have their own training facility, university, and they're folks are in Central America mostly, Honduras and El Salvador. So these folks know how to do 8-color simulated process separators. They know how the nuance of embroidery, how to set something up per vinyl, or how to clean up a DTF transfer so it works. So that expertise that's there, it's not like you're just hiring a graphic designer and having to teach them our trade. They know how to do this automatically, which to me is, and it costs a fraction of a full-time dedicated artist. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
Worth
so
every penny.
yeah, for real. So for shops just starting out, what's the first process they should streamline before they start getting too busy and
Get
complex?
shop management software. You won't regret it. No, seriously, like that quoting, order entry, order intake process is super, super important. And if you start with it, are just starting, like you are not too small for it. It will give you your money back a million times over. And I am very analytical about the decisions we make for our business, but like when it comes to some of this stuff that, so your shop management is not putting money in your pocket in terms of like physical dollars, like it's not going out and selling for you, or it's not producing product. But when you're looking at the numbers, it's definitely, talk about this in the webinar series, increasing your sales through some of these ways of, getting quotes to customers faster, not making mistakes, having a better experience for your customers, and then decreasing those expenses, less misprints, less missed orders, all the things. And then it's increasing that bottom line. And so when you look at it that way, it's almost something that you can't live without it. And even though I am very analytical and I'm slow to make decisions on the things that we want for here, I'm also not afraid to spend money on things that I know will buy us back our time and make us back our money, in a way that's not just buying a new piece of equipment.
It's always interesting when you talk to a sign franchise or somebody in one of the apparel decoration franchises, they start out with a tech stack and training from day one. So they start out with the very best
And what,
habits.
sign shops, is that what you
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, any sign shop franchise, any like apparel decoration
Oh,
franchise, they have a tech stack
franchise,
day
yeah.
one, and they get trained on it, and they pay a big fee for that, and there's financial ramifications of that, but they do that from day one. And then I'll talk to other folks, and they'll literally just suffer for years until they get to this point where they throw in the towel and I said, I need to do something. And I agree. I think from a tech stack point of view, having something from day one is critically important. And it's certainly trying to hobble together Trello boards and Excel spreadsheets where nothing communicates. It's all disjointed technology. Having one system that is quoting, messaging. And a great example of that is, Courtney does the printing for our trade show shirts. And I remember wearing one right now. I remember when we did these shirts last year, and it's got a full back print on it. Sandmar is a program. If you're a supplier, you do trade show shirts, they'll give you the blanks for free. So I filled out the Sandmar order and I sent a copy of it to Courtney and I said, hey, um, you had agreed on a price of, I think it was $8 front and back to print these for us. It was probably like 100 maybe. And so I sent over the email with the Sandmar PO. And then like 20 minutes later, I get this ping on my phone and it says, it's a text message and it says, hey, listen, here's your order with the link, approve and pay. I'm like, what? You're not going to give me terms? And I click on it, and there's my order. There's a mock-up of the artwork on the shirt that Sandmar was shipping. All the quantities are right, all the colors are right, all the imprint data was there, and there was a little approve and pay button, and I hit approve, and then I had to put it in my credit card, and I put that in there, and then I got a thank you note as soon as I processed it. And then a couple days later, it said your goods are in from Sandmar. Got a text, and then a couple days later, I got your goods are in production. Got a text, and then the day after that, I got a tracking number and saying, hey, thank you for an order with an offer for a promo code if I refer any business to you. And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Is these processes, your order intake process for that is pretty simple because you created that pretty quick,
Mhm.
created the mock-up and everything. I was surprised you did a mock-up. I thought that was pro. But that's how do you do it today, right? And how does that impact your cash flow then?
One of the best things we've ever done is ask for payment up front. Used to be afraid to do it because we did a lot of like corporate or like businesses or like they just want to pay for it with a check at pickup. But that definitely messes you up. The school districts mess you up. I would recommend to anyone who's doing school district work, PO work, like if you can try, like been able to have a conversation with our school district saying like, hey, like you get the PO number, you send it to me, but I need to pick up payment when this is done because I can't now wait for your 30, 60, 90 days for your next meetings for someone to sign a check where a PO is already approved. And so they've actually been able to do that. So yeah, I do have to front the goods for 2 weeks, but um, I invoice them and go pick up a check as soon as it's done. So having conversations with your customers is definitely helpful. And then just being able to take credit card payments, and then not sacrifice the processing fee. You're able to do what you want there. Um, but it's definitely helpful to have that whole system. Like when I put an order in, even if it's a reorder, I duplicate an old job, change the date, and then I send it out, and then boom, boom, boom. That process starts like a domino effect and it goes down the whole thing.
Yeah, and you get paid up front, which is
Mhm.
massive difference in a small business because you're not the bank, right? One of the other things I wanted to chat a little bit about is, balancing that automation, like that text messaging where I'm clicking and paying and that whole automation of your Printavo side of things with the human side. Where's the balance point? Can you do it all through technology and automation, or do you still have to talk to people?
I still think it's nice to talk to people. I know that when I work with vendors or, it's nice to have automation, but then sometimes you do just want to pick up the phone and call someone and have a one-to-one conversation with them. I definitely use the phone, or like stop in or visit with people, when it's something that I feel like is a little bit more intricate than just like sending over a quote. A lot of times there's a lot of moving parts. And so in that it's more of, I would say, in the initial sales process before you get that order into an actual order intake and then paid for. So people get so many emails, so many text messages, so many phone calls all day, every day that they start to ignore them, or it's easy to overlook it. And so sometimes if I need someone to approve something, but I know that their deadline is coming up and we're not going to make it unless I give them a phone call, I'm still doing that kind of stuff. I'm still talking orders with people. I'm still doing consultative selling essentially is what are you looking for? What are you using this for? What's your budget? And getting them into a product that fits what they want, and a lot of that can't be done, I think, by just clicking a button and sending an automation.
And answering the phone live. I don't think we're so ready for AI, that we're ready to abandon that human context. So I agree. I mean, having that balance point.
There's a
You can
balance, sure.
Yeah, you can scale yourself with a lot of automation that's smart to do that, but sometimes you just need to talk to somebody.
Mhm.
Um, so, speaking of that, so what's one piece of straight talk advice you'd give to somebody dealing with the, chaos and disorganization of running a shop and trying to get their act together? What would be that one piece of advice?
Just pick something and just do it. Even if it's just one process or one procedure or one small change or one automation, it will move the needle and you'll feel it. And then once you feel that, then you're going to want to do more. And so don't let that overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this, keep you from trying or keep you from improving.
I always like to see customers work from their immediate need kind of backwards. And I feel like for a lot of shops, getting your pricing or your quoting together is a really good place to start. You can work on automations and workflow and project management and job stages and all of those things later on. But man, once you clean up that quoting and invoicing process and order intake, boy, that makes it a massive difference on the day to day and life balance too, because you got other things you want to do. And what's an early red flag that a shop is outgrowing kind of their DIY workflows and whiteboards, spreadsheets and all that? I know you had a moment where I think you hit bottom.
I think that there's always room for improvement too, so I don't think you ever like, you can always be growing, changing, using new tools, all the things. Um, but that disorganization, that chaos, that, like, feeling like you're always in your business, you can't get anything done, you can't get ahead, that is definitely a red flag. Making mistakes, feeling disorganized, having to call customers to ask them questions, reprinting orders, like, you know, if you've ever asked yourself the question, first of all, I think everyone should have shop management no matter how small you are, how big you are, whatever. There's options for everyone. There's pricing structures for everyone. It's something that if you're serious about your business, it's something you should have. Um, so I don't think I think everyone should have it. Um, but if you're asking yourself the question of like, maybe I should get some shop management software, you probably are already past due for it.
I interviewed a customer for a customer profile, a couple months back, and she said her breaking point was, how embarrassed she was when customers would call and ask where their job was at, and she literally didn't know. And she would have to be digging through paperwork, or she's works with her husband, yelling at her husband. And she also had a really great quote that I put in actually in the article, and it was, see if I get this right. She said, "You get out of shop management software what you put into it, but
1,000%.
if you put in the work, the payoff is so worth it." That's
Mhm.
pretty close to the quote, and I agree with her. And she did the work, and she's very successful and um, wonderful human being, and life balance has been restored, and the marriage is going good. And it's not easy running a small business, and
Mhm.
I feel like that disorganization and chaos has a wear and tear on you, not only emotionally, but it can trickle down into your health and mental well-being and impact family relationships. And so,
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
there's a secondary life balance restoration part to anytime you implement good technology and spend the time to get it to work right, for real.
Yeah. I
So
would say something that Brian and I have run into because he's not like a big tech guy, but he will often blame me now for because I have a laptop that I take back and forth and I'll work remotely and stuff. And then there's a computer in the shop. Well, the computer in the shop has 2 big screens, and I like to use that when I'm here. I don't like to use my laptop. So, he often will blame me for the reason why things aren't updated in Printavo because I'm sitting at his computer. So, I would highly recommend, and we're changing that with the new shop, but I would highly recommend for each person that needs to use this on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a job basis, having their own setup, an iPad, something that is accessible to them all the time. So, it's not like, "Hey, I'll put that in later. I don't have time. You're sitting at my desk." And so that is something that I would definitely recommend if you go down that shop route. Just makes it easier for
a business owner and some of his staff members at the trade show, at the booth, that was the Printavo account.
Mhm.
And they were talking, we had just started rolling out our receiving and check-in, and they were complaining about the formatting of the paper receiving part. I'm like, "Paper receiving? What are you talking about?" I said, "You can just, Printavo's a mobile app, or it runs on a tablet." I said, "Just give your receiving person a tablet, and they can log into their account, and they can just go click, 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 and be done, and then it communicates and automates everything back to their coworkers. Because when they finish that receiving, it's gonna message their coworker that it's received, ready to get scheduled for printing." And they were like, sitting there going, "You gotta be kidding me." And I got them to pin them down on the spot to say they're going paperless. They said, "Yep, we're gonna go paperless." And that's what technology can do that a pad and paper can't. It can communicate across multitudes of departments and check off tasks that are done, or update job statuses in a workflow, or text a customer with an update on where their order is. That's technology. And all those little pieces, and chip away at them, makes for a better customer experience. You get to keep your customers, and employees seem to enjoy working more under and more of a structured, organized type of situation.
Mhm.
So, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what was one of the challenges you overcame that you're most proud of? Like the one thing you're run into that you're most proud of, and how did shop management software play a role in that?
Ugh, I think being able to being well, I've talked about this a lot, but being able to get out of my own way for sure. And so just implementing shop management in and of itself has been super helpful with that. Something that's really tough is saying no for me, no matter what it is in my personal life, in setting boundaries. And so some of the challenging customers that we've had over the years, some of the most proud moments that I have and the most relieving moments that I have as a business owner is um, and doesn't happen often, but, like, telling customers, "Hey, we can't do this job to the way that you want it," or "You're not a good fit for, like, how we run," and everyone has those customers. You don't have to say yes to those customers, and some of those moments for me on a personal level, on a business level, have been my proudest moments in being able to hold those boundaries and be able to set that so that we're able to make money, be profitable, have a good business, but kind of keep that out of there.
Yeah, not only does that free up your time, but also frees up some mental space too. Best way to get rid of a customer is to raise their prices until they're tolerable.
Mm.
People always laugh at that joke, but there's some truth there
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
AI, I have a theory. we are seeing this massive influx of people, first-time people filling out forms, contacting the company that are first-time technology adopters. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's a real thing. We're monitoring, we're seeing it. They fill out a form fill or sign up for a trial or call the company, and they've never implemented technology within their company. And this is true for Printavo, and it's also true for SignTracker, which is our sign shop management tool. And I started interviewing those folks, and I'm like trying to figure out what the commonality is. And what it is, it's AI. That we see so much about AI, and there's so much media attention, social media attention around AI that I think people are now starting to get a sense that the world is moving very rapidly in terms of this technology shift. And at the very least, maybe starting off with some shop management software to kind of at least ease themselves into technology is probably a great first step. But I also talk with customers that their whole business is being run out of AI. And where do you feel like the balance point is? Like, how do you use AI, and where's your balance point on that?
I think it has a place. I think it has a specific place, and I think it's definitely usable. For me, I don't me my like I don't have the time to sit down and figure out how to use it necessarily, or like to create an AI bot or do something like that. However, where I think it is super helpful is other companies, other apps, things I'm already using, Google Workspace, I mean, stuff in Printavo, stuff in Inksoft, all of that. Those companies are already utilizing AI to make our experience better. And so to be able to use what they have already done and what they've already built out is definitely super helpful. And I will do that as much as I can. Um, you know, Sales, we've talked about, you can put into ChatGPT that you want a list of, construction companies with 25 plus employees within a 50-mile radius and get a list of contact information. And so it's usable. And there's definitely ways that you can leverage it for sure. And companies are already using it to help you guys because they had to pivot their businesses to say, like, okay, well, now that it's AI, how are we going to use that to keep our businesses going? And so, we're definitely using it. Um, for sure, yeah.
What's the one mindset shift you both think is critical for a shop owner looking to grow profitably in today's landscape? So what shift their mindset for a profitable shop in today's business landscape?
When we're talking about that keyword of profitable, right? It's not all revenue, not all sales is gonna convert into profit, right? That top line number is not the same thing. $1 million in sales where you're a net negative for profit, like, that's not somewhere I ever wanna be, because we're working our butts off and, you built something, put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. So, um, you really wanna keep an eye on the numbers and making sure it's a profitable business, and that mindset of all sales are good sales is something that is definitely something to reconfigure. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, it's that, "Hey, I can do all of this myself. I can do everything. I am the only one that can do this or do this well or do this to that level." And so for me, it's a lot of that is being able to work on your business, look at yourself, look at your business. Where can you make improvements? Where are you falling short? And then being willing to make those changes and to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and a lot of times something that's seemingly innocuous or small has huge downstream impacts, like sending out a text message to approve and pay. The
Mhm.
impact that has on your finances, right? Something as simple as that. And
Yeah.
also, I would just add to that also, you're looking at this, what do you want your lifestyle to be, right? So you're growing and you're scaling and the business is growing and maybe you're adding employees and equipment and you've implemented technology, but why are you doing this? What's your endpoint? What do you want your lifestyle to look like? Because if you're comfortable with chaos and just grow, 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 where are you gonna spend your free time?
This is a great story, and it's a principle, you can look it up. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's called the Pareto principle, Pareto. I think that's the right one. Well, anyway, it's this principle of, like, when you allot yourself a certain amount of time, that is the amount of time that it will take to do that thing. Now, there's, like, obviously, this does not apply to everything in life because, like, you're not gonna be able to build a house in 3 hours. Like, I get that. But we had this job, we had to get out the door. So kids play ice hockey, and so we did all the spirit wear for the state tournament this past weekend, and we got it from a vendor that, is not like a normal 2-day ship, and so it took a bit to get here, and it literally showed up at 1 o'clock the day we were supposed to have 'em at the rink at 5 o'clock. And so we were able to, we had 4 hours, we had to get it done, and so we just busted our butts, we got it done. And so, that job would have taken, you go do some stuff, you come back to it, it doesn't, you had to put the names on, you wait till tomorrow. But like when you just have a certain amount of time and you have to get something done, you do it. And that's kind of what our mentality is, um, outworking the competition is a big one for us too, because we work a lot. And so if you're willing to say yes to stuff, charge for it, say yes to it and work, you'll win all day.
Yeah, one thing I want to do here, I'm going to share my screen and talk about some resources that are available to all of you. So this is the landing page for our Printavo Masterclass, and this is a 4-part series of short form webinars that Courtney did on running a shop, and each one of them has a specific topic. There's also slide decks that go along with these, so you have access to not only the video, you can just play the video, but you can also do the slide deck. Courtney, do you want to chat a little bit about Masterclass and then some of the things that you offer in
Yeah.
your consulting business?
Yeah, so they're just meant to be little snippets and they kind of take you through an action plan. So classes like this, webinars like this are great because you talk about big picture, you're talking about strategy and just like being in the trenches and what you can do to fix it. These classes on this link that Craig is showing you were more meant to be like little bite-sized actionable things. And so like the takeaways from this webinar really, where am I at? Where do I want to be? Where are my bottlenecks? And then how I can get there. And so really goes into the in-depth process of where your shop's at with shop management and how to kind of grow from there. So meant to be really digestible, 20 minutes each, so that you can kind of just listen to them in the car or take a look at them or whatever you want to do. And then on the side, I am working, I'm in my print shop doing some stuff with Inktovo too, but I do some consulting on the side, working on a website and a proper logo at the moment. But all my information is in those master classes if you want to reach out to me. A lot of what I do is just consulting with shops about specific issues they're having. And then the other part of that would be you have Printavo or interested in getting Printavo, I can help implement for you, or you have it but are not maybe using it to its fullest advantage and auditing what you're doing and then coming up with some suggestions. And, if you don't have the manpower, the experience, or the time to want to do that and you want to delegate it, I'm happy to help with that. So.
I think that's an invaluable set of resources that you offer, Courtney. And sometimes I feel like your agent. I talk to so many different customers that are in need. They just want to take it up a level, and they want somebody that can kind of go in to their Printavo account, kind of see their standard operating procedures, implement good workflows, set up the power scheduler, help them with their pricing. So kudos to you for taking the initiative to put together a business to assist people. It has a financial impact on everybody involved, but also I think it's just kind of good for the industry as well. So knowledge is power. So thank you again, Courtney, for coming and hanging out with me today. We'll
Thanks
do
for
this
having me
again
on.
sometime, and then we will see you on the next one.